Hello and welcome. In this video, we are going to be discussing 3 common and logically fallacious ways that politicians often try to convince you to believe something that they haven't really given you a real or authentic reason or argument for believing. And my hope for this video is that through this discussion, you'll have a better understanding of some of the things to look out for when politicians are giving talks or addresses, or generally trying to convince you of something. However, before we jump into our topic for the day, I just have a quick word from our sponsor, Skillshare. So those of you guys who have been with me for a long time know that I've never featured a sponsored ad in a video before. This is pretty much because I've never felt like the offers that I've had fit with the brand of the channel. I haven't seen how the products I've been offered would fit with you guys, and therefore I just haven't done them. A worthwhile brand has finally reached out to me, and that is, as I said, Skillshare. It's an online learning community with more than 25,000 courses that you can take in topics ranging from technology, business, entrepreneurship, design. There are all kinds of things. There is literally something to fit everyone. The best thing about Skillshare to me compared to other sites that I've heard of is that most of the classes they offer aren't just for your personal enjoyment, but these are skills that you could put on a resume and help you learn how to do things that you would need in the job market. So for example, one thing that I've noticed for me that I'm missing in my education is data science, and I have been a little bit scared about how to go about it or how to start learning about it, but I have been blessed by Skillshare to see the classes they have, and I'm starting to learn, starting to grasp things a little bit better, and the more that I grasp it, the more that I'll be able to write on my resume, I know how to do this. And one of the best things about Skillshare, on top of everything I've mentioned, is that it's actually affordable. For an annual subscription, it's less than $10 a month. If you go down below, there's a link in my description. If you sign up through that link, it'll give you your first 2 months to try it out and see how you feel for free. Jordan Peterson says make your bed. Alice Void says make a Skillshare account. So with that being said, let us now move into a discussion of these 3 common logical fallacies. The first I'd like to discuss is one that you have doubtless heard a plethora of times, and that is the appeal to pity. The appeal to pity essentially harnesses and manipulates someone's feelings of guilt or pity in order to get them to accept a certain point of view. The reason this is a logical fallacy is because one's feelings of guilt or pity over something have nothing to do with the correctness or incorrectness of a certain idea or the truth value of a certain product one is trying to get you to believe. An example of this would be to refer back to the dialogues that were occurring between politicians and media outlets during the migrant caravan crisis. So one of the main arguments I heard coming from the left, although no offense to anyone on the left watching this, was that these people from the Northern Triangle have fled a disastrous situation in their home countries. There is gang violence, drug violence, dead children in the streets. These families are fleeing for their lives, for freedom, for liberty, to have a good life somewhere else that they cannot have where they are. And on top of that, they have walked thousands of miles from the Northern Triangle countries all the way up to the Mexico-US border, looking for asylum, looking for help. And because of their suffering, because of everything they've gone through in their countries and on their walk here, we must find accommodation to let them in, to give them all asylum in the US. Everything I just said is meant to evoke your sympathy and your pity. It's to arouse your emotions, to make you think, well, what if that was me? And then use that as a reason for letting the thousands of migrants into the US. But the point here is that how we feel about others' suffering in this case has nothing to do with the correctness or incorrectness of the US letting people, thousands of people, without anywhere to put them, without jobs for them, to just bring them in. Right? There's no plan of attack that was given in the argument I made. There was no, this is how we can do this is how we can allocate resources. You could tie in their suffering to that and make an argument, but just putting their suffering there as an argument form is not an argument. It's invalid, it's illogical, it's a manipulation to try and get you to support that particular left-leaning point of view. Although I am left-leaning, no offense to anyone who's left-leaning. So the next fallacy I'd like to discuss is something called the red herring. So a red herring is essentially an argument that attempts to change the subject, redirecting the audience away from the real issue at hand onto a related but notably obviously different issue of which the speaker feels more comfortable with or is an agenda that the speaker would prefer to push. So in this way, the speaker gives the interpretation or impression that they're continuing along the same topic when in fact they're redirecting it. Since I picked on the left in my last example, I will now pick on right-leaning people in this example. So something I often hear in debates about the minimum wage between the left and the right is the left will say something like, "We need a higher minimum wage to meet people's living standards." And a right-leaning person often responds, "It may be true that we need to raise the minimum wage, but what we really need to focus on is lessening burdensome government regulations on big business so that businesses have more room to grow and therefore are able to pay their employees higher salaries." So depending on where you sit in the political spectrum, you might be thinking, that wouldn't be that unreasonable of a response to someone saying, or a discussion or debate about the minimum wage. But in fact, it really is, right? Because that response is a response which tries to change the conversation from specifically the minimum wage to making it seem like lessening government regulations would be related and therefore could possibly affect the minimum wage. But what that person's really doing is just changing the discussion to a discussion about lessening government regulations. They're trying to make it so that we're no longer talking about improving people's living standards, but improving the environment for big business. Common logical fallacy number 3, ad numerum or ad populum. So this is an argument which essentially tries to get you to believe something is true based on the fact that a large majority or a lot of people believe that it's true. One example of this I love to pick on is Bernie Sanders. Whenever he gets out on a podium and declares, "The vast majority of American people want the wealthiest Americans to pay their fair share of taxes." However, obviously, the number of people that believe something to be true has nothing to do with the actual truth value of what they believe. There is an immense difference between what one believes and what's actually true, between knowledge and belief. So therefore, that argument that Bernie Sanders is making, which is more or less just an argument to say that wealthier people should pay higher taxes, isn't an argument when it comes in that form. And funny enough, I hear a lot of Canadians echoing that same kind of Bernie Sanders slogan. But what I think a lot of people, especially around my age, don't realize is what Canada's actual tax brackets are. So for example, if you make over $220,000 per year, you have to pay 50% of that to the government. And you're not even that wealthy at 220, and forget the 220, you're then cut down to 120. So you're basically going from wealthy to upper middle class. So while I'm on the topic, if you want to make an argument for increasing taxes, you need to lay out the present tax brackets, how much wealthy people, middle class people, how much is everybody paying, and what should they be paying comparatively, and how is that justified? Simply saying, I believe this, the majority of people believe this, doesn't mean anything. So that concludes our discussion for the day. Let me know in the comments of any more examples of these fallacies you can think of in politics. And remember, although I've used politics as the sort of discussion forum for these logical fallacies, these fallacies can be used in any argument form. It doesn't have to just be specifically about politics. So if you can think of any more examples of these fallacies, please leave them down in the comments to start a discussion and for everybody to have some fun with. If you want to see more content overall, continuously, forever and ever, head over to Patreon. And a very last final note, don't forget to hit the link below to sign up on Skillshare for your free 2 months. Don't forget to do that. It will actually help you in life. Farewell.